Okay, so today we're going to be covering the backend training for PixelPoint, specifically version 20 of Pixel. Um, with version 20 of Pixel, it's a different interface, which is called back office on the screen. If you're using any versions before version 20, you might be more familiar with the system setup, which is the globe. The interface has changed, but a lot of the functionality is still the same. So for the purposes of the training, I'm going to go through the back office. And at the end of the training session, I'm going to kind of circle back with the system setup globe and show you the different things that you can still do on the globe. So actually in version 20, you can actually use both, but there is some limitations to the old system set. Which I will kind of go through at the end. But for the most part, you should probably stick with the back office, okay? So to start out the process, we're going to click on the back office icon, and we're going to go ahead and log in. So we have our login part. So you would take your PIN number that's provided that you use on the front end, so it would be the same PIN number. So you manage your code here. You don't have to have a username, so you just either type in the password here, or you can use manual login and type in your code or hit the numbers as well. Hit OK. Okay, so that's going to bring you to the screen. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the product setup. Okay, so with the product setup, when we're doing the initial product setup or we're starting out from scratch, the first thing that we're going to want to do, so there are three sections to the products. There's what's called a summary group, which is the top end. The summary group is just a way to mark an item as food item or a bar item or a beverage item. So it's like your department. Then the next tier, we have what's called a report category. So this is going to be more specific. It's going to be like appetizers, burgers, entrees, cocktails, wine, so on and so forth. So it's going to be a little bit more specific. Most of the configuration is done on the report category level. The summary group is really just to mark the item as food, bar, beverage, or like merchandise, so on and so forth. And it's purely just for sales. And then from there, then we have our product setup. Our product setup, you bind the report category to the product setup. And then from there, the product will bind to that appetizers, burgers, entrees, and whatever you config for the taxes, the printing locations, things like that will pull from the report category. So first off, we're going to go into the products right here, and we're going to go take a look at our summary groups. So that's the first step for programming products. And we're going to want to make sure that we have all of our summary groups created and designed exactly the way we want. So if I click on the Find button, we can see all of the default summary groups that are currently in the system. So right now we have bar, beverage, food, merchandise, and other. If you don't need to change these, then you can pretty much leave them alone. If you want to change the verbiage a little bit, you can. Like if you want to change merchandise or other to something else, you can click on it, hit select, and then you can change that. Also make sure that we're mapping the report type properly as well, because it does have some effect on the reports and on the cache outs and stuff like that. Okay. If you want to create another summary group, you just go new here, type in another group, and then choose the report type. There's an active flag where you can inactivate a summary group as well. It's not really needed, but if you wanted to clean things up a little bit, you can. Just make sure that if you're deactivating a summary group that's currently in use, you make sure that it's not bound to any report categories, and you replace it with another summary group. Okay. So from there, we're going to go into report categories. That's the next part. So report categories, as you can see, if we click the Find tool, we have our categories such as appetizers, bottle, brunch, burgers, cocktails, coolers, all of those different categories. These are all created, so these are not going to be created by default. You have to create them all. Or if you have a service contract and the service technician does the programming, you can do that as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and choose appetizers. We'll hit select. So this is what the report category looks like. At the top, this is just the description. This is where the summary group comes into play. So you attach a summary group to a report category, not to the product itself. So how it works is the summary group is attached to the report category, and then the report category is attached to the item. So then it kind of like basically. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at appetizers. So we'll hit select. So we have the description is appetizers, the revenue center. So you can bind different revenue centers for the report categories if you choose to. A revenue center might be like you have a restaurant and a lounge in your business, and you want to kind of split the sales, so you could attach a different revenue center if you wanted to. This is where you bind the summary group. So in here we would choose if the appetizers is food, bar, beverage, so on and so forth. You don't attach the summary group to an item, you attach it to the category. And then the report category is then attached to the item. So that's how that works. Okay. Now at the bottom, we have our default print location. So you need to choose a print channel where the chits are going to go. So in this case, we have designed that we would like any items within the appetizers category is going to print to the kitchen channel, and whatever printer's in the kitchen channel is going to print to that. So if you click the three dots here, you can see these are all the different print channels. Now the print channels are usually configured by a service tech, and then you would go in and choose whichever you want. So these are completely customizable, and they may look different depending on your business. You know, if you were a pizza place, the kitchen might be called pizza, right? So it all depends on what routing you want. You could have a cold printer and a hot printer, in which case, if it's appetizers, you might just want it to go to the hot. And then if you had a salads report category, you would choose the salad printer. Or if it's something where it has a mix of both, then you can obviously choose both printers as well, right? Or if you have like a kitchen screen, you can map it to the kitchen screen and maybe to a chit printer, right? And then for drinks, if you have a bar printer that's designated for bar chits, then you would map it to the bar printer as well. And then local is always going to be your receipt printer. So if for some reason you needed chits to go to a receipt printer, you can do that as well. I've seen some stores do the local for some of the chits. Maybe if it's you know, like for merchandise or something like that, maybe it might print up on local. Now, if you don't want any chits to print whatsoever, you're just going to go clear and hit OK. There are some situations that you don't want any chits to print, and in that case, you would go like that. So the chits do not mean receipts, right? The receipts are for the bill at the end of the payment side. So this has nothing to do with that. This is just if you want your kitchen or bar to get a chit to make the you know, the food or like the beverage or the drinks, right? Then next up we have our taxes. So this is where you can designate taxes or a lack of taxes here. On default, we have GST, but if you're in a different province, you can have GST or PST or even HST. So for the tax rates, you need a service tech to configure those. But once you're configured, you can then design which categories get what taxes or no taxes at all. Any modifications you make, you hit the save option. And that's basically how the report categories are designed. Now, the last thing on here is schedule. Okay, so schedule is going to come into play a little bit later, but I need to kind of describe this a little bit first. So when we click on schedule, what this allows us to do is we can design happy hour pricing, or Wednesday special pricing, or like daily special pricing. And you can see we have Sunday to Saturday across the top from 12 a.m. to basically 12 a.m. the next day. The whole idea is that any products that belong to the appetizers category, they're going to, on default, get their price A pricing. But in here, you can say, well, actually, Wednesday, between 12 to 5, you can click on one of the other price letters. So we can do price D and hit save. So what that's going to do is any items within appetizers from 12 to 5 on Tuesday are going to automatically flip their pricing to price D. So on the item level, and we'll kind of show this later, you can map price D to be a different price, and so automatically the item on the POS is going to change its price. Okay, so you can do many different levels. You can have a happy hour from 7 to 9, let's say, and you can do that for price B, and so it'll have different tiers. So on Tuesday up until 12, it'll be just regular price, price A, and then it'll flip to your price D, and then back to regular price again, and then it will kick in your happy hour pricing. So this is basically how you design that automated pricing that changes. There's also an option under here for use 15-minute intervals. So if you really want to get granular with your deals, you can go like this, and now you can go, I want to do from 3 a.m. to 3:45. So if you need those 15-minute increments, you can do that as well. Okay, so the next piece is, once you've configured the summary groups and the report categories, now you can start to create your products. So if you go under the products tab, you'll see products here. So there are two ways to create products. One is in the layout itself, and one is under this products page. So we're going to go ahead and do the products style setup first. So we click on products here. This is going to bring you to your product database, essentially. Now in your product database, it's going to have every single item in the system that's active. If you click on the find button, you're able to search your products. So if you're looking for a chicken, everything with chicken in it will show up on this list. So it's just an easy way to find products. There's also a way to filter by specific category. So if you're looking to see all of the stuff in appetizers, you can go in here and take a look at your appetizers, right? So that's another way. Now, when you're in the actual products, we have our description on the left-hand side. So this is just the description in the database and what prints on the receipts for the customer, okay? The printed description is what goes to your chip printers. So sometimes you like to abbreviate for the kitchen staff or for the bartenders. Well, you could change the description differently than what shows up on the receipt printer. So that's your printed description. Also, too, a lot of the ribbon printers have max 16 characters, so sometimes you need to shorten what prints on the on the chip printers. Down here we have type of product. There's a lot of different products, but we're just going to focus on the top two for this training video. One is called ordering product, so that's just your main selling product, right? Pretty straightforward. The option, however, is if you're creating a modifier for a particular product. So a modifier might be like no bacon, add onions, extra sauce, do not make, anything like that. The reason why we configure it as an option is so that when you bring in an ordering product, and like for instance this 2 eggs breakfast, we're going to have modifiers to tell us, how to cook the eggs, right? So do we want it sunny side up, over easy, over hard? We want those modifiers to link up with the 2 eggs breakfast and not exist on its own. And so when we create those sunny side up options, we set them to options so that they link up with the 2 eggs breakfast. And it becomes one product essentially. The other reason why we set to option is if you have a black and red ribbon for your chit printer, the options will print in red to signify that it is a modifier and not a main selling product. So there's a couple of reasons why. Also, when you're splitting checks, if you set the modifiers as an option, that means that when you're moving like 2 eggs breakfast around that has like the bread type and the egg type, you can just click on the 2 eggs breakfast and move it over. Whereas if you set the sunny side up and the over easy to an ordering product type, then you'd have to manually click 2 eggs breakfast, sunny side up, and white toast all individually to move that item over between splits. So it just makes it a little bit easier. Next up here we have our report category. So this is very important. What report category we select will change the sale reporting, right? So we'll be able to see how many, like items we sold under brunch. It's going to, like again, we went through before, the taxes are very important. So, the categories will configure the taxes for the items. It will also tell the item what summary group it belongs to. If there's any price scheduling, as we mentioned before, that's very important as well. And where it's going to route to. So if it's going to route to like a kitchen printer, bar printer, things like that. So always make sure to map your report category correctly. Okay. Next up here, we have our price levels. So earlier we mentioned pricing. Your price A is your default price, but you can also configure these other price levels. So as we mentioned before, if you create a schedule within your report categories, like your brunch category, maybe you have some kind of special on Fridays from a certain time period. Well, if you flip the pricing, so let's say we create that schedule to say price A is all the time, price B is from 10 to 4 on Fridays. Well, if you change this price here, when it flips the price B, it's going to automatically lower the price. So this is how you do the scheduled pricing on the item. Okay, and you can use up to price J if you need to. Okay, so next up is our force questions. So force questions are a way to give potential modifiers to a product. And the reason why you want to add modifiers to a product is maybe the kitchen or the bar needs additional information on how to make the order, or maybe you have some upsell that you want, like add beef to nachos, or add cheese to something, or add an extra patty for a burger, things like that. Or maybe there's some modifiers like, please remove pickles or, onions or something like that, right? So on a product, you have up to 5 force questions. Okay, so you can see the drop down here. So when the force questions are created, you can share the force questions among different products. So for instance, I have my egg type here. So for all of my egg meals, I would obviously choose the same force question egg type because that's not going to differentiate between all of the different breakfasts, right? But the only time you'd want to create different force questions that have very similar items is if they're priced out differently or if you want to hide certain options for certain things. So here's a perfect example. You have your 2 egg breakfast and then you have eggs Benedict, right? So technically you need an egg type for both the 2 eggs breakfast and the eggs Benedict, but for the eggs Benedict we only do poached. So we only do soft, medium, hard. But for the 2 eggs breakfast, we do sunny side up, over easy, over medium, over hard. So even though it's still in the same ballpark, we have different subsets. But we have a 2 eggs breakfast and a 3 eggs breakfast, while we can share that same egg type. So you can create all the different force questions depending on your need. So from top to bottom, we have our what we want to show up first. It's completely up to you. So like, depending on the flow of the kitchen, maybe we need to click the 2 eggs breakfast And the first modifier that we show up on the screen is it sunny side up or over easy? And that might be how the kitchen wants it. Then they want to see bread next and meat, or so on and so forth. So the order in which you go is going to be from top to bottom. Ask questions at once. What that does is, if we were to uncheck this, the egg type, as soon as you click 2 eggs breakfast, the egg type will show up on the screen. You click that, you hit OK. That question will go away, and then the bread type will come up. So basically, the server is just attacking one question at a time, right? But if we check mark this, all forced questions will show up on one big page. And you got to click through the entire order before you hit OK to push it into the chat. So I like both for different reasons. Sometimes it's nice to focus on one at a time because there's less clutter on the screen. But also it's nice to see all of the questions on one page because it's a lot quicker as well. And you can also verify that the order is correct before you send it. So there's honestly pros and cons to both. You just need to figure out what works for you. Now, as far as creating the forced questions, we're going to get into that now. So let's get out of here, and we're going to go into the forced questions themselves. So here we go. This is the actual forced question page. If you click the find, you'll see all the different forced questions on here so far. So you can create a new forced question here, or you can modify an existing one. So at the top here, the name. This is just going to be the name in the database. We also have the question, so this is what is going to appear on the point of sale. And then we have the number of choices the user may select. So if you want to have more than one, you can set this up. Minimum number of answers, are we going to force them to pick a minimum number? So if we set it to 0, it means that they can select up to 99, but they don't have to. Allow multiple means that they can hit the same answer more than once, but this obviously needs to program in conjunction with the number of choices they may select. So if you have only 5 answers in your list and you set the number of choices to 99, but you don't have allow multiple checked, that means that theoretically they can only choose 5 times. Okay. If we scroll over to our answer list, this is where you start populating all of your answers in the forced question. So for the add sauces, we can see barbecue, buffalo blue, and Nashville hot are the answers in there. We can also sort this page alphabetically because from top to bottom, this is how it shows up on the POS. Barbecue is going to be the first item that will appear. If we don't want it in alphabetical and we want maybe the hot to show up first, we can select the hot like that and move it up on the list. If you want to add another forced question, you click on the add button, and then basically you can go down the list and find an option to add to the forced question list. I'll show you how to create options afterwards, but that's where you go to add it. Now, last thing on here, we have price mode, which is very important. So if it's a modifier that doesn't get a price, well, most likely you're going to create the hot option in the database with $0, and then you're fine. Now, if you wanted to create a price, you could go price A, which means that whatever the price for the Nashville hot is, it's going to pull that price. Or you can get creative and, maybe you want to use your modifiers across multiple forced questions, but have different tiers for it. So the example would be, let's say that you have a small pizza, a medium pizza, and a large pizza, and toppings increase in price depending on the size. But you don't want to create like a small mushroom, small bacon, small pineapple, medium mushroom, medium pineapple. You just want to create one pineapple answer, but have 3 different prices. In theory, you could use price A for small price for the pepperoni, price B for the medium price pepperoni, and price C for the large pepperoni, right? So you can use these a number of ways. The other way you can do it is fixed price. So fixed price is you can literally type out a price inside the force question. So it's going to ignore whatever pricing is on the answer, and you're going to price it out yourself. The good thing about this is, it's not going to affect anything else in the database, just this force question. The downside is when you're dealing with price changes across the board, like let's say you're doing your yearly price changes. Well, you have to also remember and take into consideration that if you've used the fixed price mode, you need to go into all your force questions and adjust those prices as well. So sometimes it's easier just to use the price A and price B, but it's completely up to you. Okay, so with the answer list, just to kind of circle back, you can add anything as an answer. Like you could add, let's say you had a selling product that was, I don't know, like a chicken burger. You could technically add a chicken burger as the answer. You could add anything as an answer. But generally, we're going to create different products to deal with those answers. So how you do that is you're going to exit out of here, and you're going to go back into products, and then you're going to select new. You're going to type in your description and your printed description. So in this case, I'll go test. Type of product, we're usually going to set this to options so that it links up with our main product. Report category, we'll use like a food ad page or a food mod page. Make it easy. And then really the last thing is, do we want to price this out in the modify price? Do we want to use price A, B, or C? Or is this an item that just that does not collect any prices? If that's the case, all you got to do is hit save, exit, and then you're going to go back to your force questions page. And now you can go to answer, and you can add that recently created test option and select. And now you have an answer within your first question. Okay, so hopping back into the products, we're going to go into more info. If you ever need to set up like a date range where this product is active, you can change the end date here, and that's going to basically deactivate the product over a certain period of time. You can program a barcode into the product so that it could be scanned. So we have some customers that have some grocery in their restaurants. If you plug in a barcode scanner, we can configure the till to scan a barcode. Feature codes are something that we can set up. So basically feature codes are different ways to change the dynamics of the product. So an example of a feature code would be to make it tax inclusive. So there's a famous feature code 1 that makes the product tax inclusive, so that if you put $10 or let's say $15 in as the price, that's going to be the final price, and it's going to calculate the taxes within that, as opposed to your traditional method of putting $15 and then having the tax on top of that. There's also the loyalty system where you can add points awarded for the product. So if you add a certain amount of points, you can every time you sell this under a customer profile, they will collect points, and then you can create discounts to to have a point worth. You can also do exemption from gratuity. The manual entered is if you want, like let's say it's an open food product and you want a price to pop up, so you could have that here. You could check mark price, and so it's going to ignore whatever price is in here in favor of a manually entered price that's going to show up on the POS. So a few different options here. Size up, size down. If you ask one of the support people to create a size up and size down button, you can basically have these size up, size down buttons on the front POS, And if you were to click size up, you could go 3 eggs breakfast, for instance. And when you click on 2 eggs breakfast on the POS, if you have that size up button and it's actually configured correctly, you could size up the 2 egg to a 3 egg. So something more practical would be like small fries to a medium fries, small drink to a medium drink. It's more so for fast food than it would be full-scale restaurant, but it is in there. Or you could have like a single whiskey, double whiskey. You could have your size up to be a double, or pint to a to a pitcher or something like that. Under custom, so what the custom does is it has the ability to ignore the report category settings in favor of its own settings. When you checkmark this, define custom, it's going to do its own settings, but just be very careful when you use this button. It's going to ignore and wipe out everything that was in the category. So if your category was brunch and the default printer was kitchen and GST was selected, as soon as you checkmark this, the print location goes away, GST goes away. So make sure that when you are clicking this, you are then going in, choosing the correct printer that you need, and collecting the correct taxes that you need also. If you don't do this, you're not going to charge your appropriate taxes, and you won't print to the right place. Now, why would you use Define Custom? So Define Custom works when you have one particular product in a category that that shouldn't print the same way as the rest of the category items, or shouldn't have taxes or something like that. So there are really 3 fields that you could use this for. So let's say maybe the 2 eggs breakfast you don't want to print to the kitchen, maybe you want it to print to the bar, or maybe you don't want it to print at all. You could go clear and go like that. So now when the 2 eggs breakfast is rung in, because we've set Define Custom, it's going to ignore the brunch category fields in place of its own. We're also going to go into taxes, make sure that that's collected. However, if it's an item that should not be collecting taxes, we uncheck that as well. And the last thing that can be done is under schedule, we click the schedule button, and then in here we can also configure a pricing schedule the same way that we did the reporting schedule, but just for this particular item. So maybe the example would be every Friday the 2 eggs breakfast goes on special, but the rest of the brunch doesn't go on special. Then in this case we would go in, hit Define Custom, make sure that we are setting all of our print locations properly, our taxes properly, and then we would go in and start to price out that Friday special or something like that. Always remember the black not present means that the button will be crossed out. So in the case of you creating an actual special product and you don't want that special product, like let's say Wing Wednesday, in theory in the schedule you could black out everything like this and then put in your schedule A for your Wing Wednesday so that they never use that Wing Wednesday button except for Wednesday. So there's a lot of dynamic ways you can use the Define Custom. So next up I'm going to be talking about the employee setup. So we see the employees tab and we see employees here. So this is basically where you go to set up the employees. Now before I get into that, I want to talk about job positions. So if I click on job positions and I select the Find button, we can see currently all the default job positions that are in the system. The reason why the job positions are so important is each security level, or in this case job position, will have a certain amount of rights and access in the point of sale, whether it be the front end or the back end. And you dictate what each level means and what it can or can't do. You can create more job positions as you need to, but the 2 main focuses, one is it will dictate what the employees will do. So when you create a new employee, you'll assign a bartender role, and then depending on what you've dictated the bartender role can do, they will only be able to do those certain things. Number 2, the other function is for reporting purposes and for time clock as well. So you'll be able to see, all the bartenders in the system and what they did, so on and so forth. So just getting back out of there, we're going to scroll down to security, and we're going to take a look at security levels. Okay, so this is where you dictate the job security. So if we go to find, this is every function in PixelPoint that can be dictated. And there's quite a lot. But for instance, let's go access to all tables. So currently that's set to bartender. So access to all tables would be, the ability to look into other people's bills, right? So in that case, you might want that to be higher than bartender. So in this case, you would say, well, actually, I want this set to a manager. So right now it's set to 30, which means the bartenders at the service can do it. But you can increase this to, let's say, managers or maybe waitstaff managers. And then from there, everything in the star means that they can't access all tables. And then everything above can. So that's how the security levels work. Access to any table means that, they can, go into any table they see fit that's open or that's available, basically. And yeah, so you would go in and you would dictate these rules. The nice thing about the security levels is on the front POS, if you're locked out of a certain function, so for instance, access to all tables. So you're a bartender, you're trying to go into someone else's tables. It's going to come up with a void message saying access to all tables, you need security level for this. So it'll actually tell you what the function is. So in the case of something where you want to decrease the access so that a bartender or server can use it, well, the message is going to pop up with the actual description. So then you can take that description, you can type it in the search function, and then you can go ahead and make that change. Whenever you're changing staff members' security levels or job positions or things like that, the employee must clock out and clock back in to get those new changes. So let's say today, this morning, we have all of our employees clocking in, and then you notice that, well, for some reason, no one can access the tables. Well, in that case, we would need to go in, make the function change to the security levels, and then you would basically need to clock out those employees, clock them back in to get the new functions. Okay, so now circling back to the employees, you just click on that here, and this is where you see all of your employees that are currently programmed in the system. If you wanted to create a new employee, you just hit this. Employee name is going to be the first name, last name is last name, pretty straightforward. POS name is what shows up on the receipts and on the screens. The rest of the information is purely optional for account or for record purposes, something like that. The only real important thing here is the PIN number, right, aside from the employee name and last name. So the PIN number here is going to be, you would hit assign card, and you would either swipe a card if you have it, if you want them to have a card, or you go manual enter and you type in a PIN number. So you type in the PIN number, and you hit save. And now you've coded a login code for that employee, okay? The next step is going to be job position. So we talked about that earlier. This is when you give that particular person rights. So we click on add, and now we're going to say, okay, this is a bartender, so we're going to hit select. Pay rate per hour, it is optional. If you want to put in the pay rate, that's fine. If not, you just type in 0 and hit OK. You could also put in a start date too if you'd like. And if there's a training mode, you can do that as well. Next up, under advanced, this is very important to take note of. So On the right side, we have the system interface, okay? So this changes, so depending on what you select, this changes the dynamics of the point of sale. So when you're logging in as restaurant seating, you're going to see a floor plan right when you log in. Whereas if you were set to quick order, you may not see the floor plan. You may see like a fast food kind of setting. So if you are a fast food business, you technically need to program all of your cashiers as quick order. Okay, so these other ones too, this will have a host screen, a delivery screen, so on and so forth. The top three that are important is the table layout seating, the quick order for your fast food kind of scenarios, and then clock in, clock out. So even though you set up a job position for clock in, clock out, which is basically, for the most part, it means like kitchen staff or, like dishwasher, things like that. When you set up that clock in and clock out, you also need to select the system interface because you're giving them the security rights of the clock in, clock out, but you need to give them the visibility of the clock in, clock out. And all this basically does is when you log in at the start of the morning with clock in, clock out interface enabled, when you hit the manual login, you type in your PIN, it will log them in and immediately go back to the login screen. And then at the end of the day, when they're ready to clock out, they hit their PIN and it goes right to the screen where you hit clock out. So it basically ignores all the point of sale screens. They can only see the clock out portion. Then on the left hand side down here, if you had an employee like you wanted to ignore, let's say their shift hours, you could do that as well. So there's a few different options here. Once you're done, you hit save, and then you're ready to publish. Okay, so now we're going to tackle the coupons. So coupons are going to be for discounts and things like that. So all we need to do is select the coupons at the top. You can create a new one down here, or you can look at some of the existing coupons in the system. So there are many different discounts that you can do. The discounts are applied at the end of the transaction, so when you go into the finish screen, you can select them. Here are the different types that you have. So we have percent off, so it's just percent to the categories that you select. Amount off, so that's like $1 off. Fixed. Okay, so next up we're going to go into the coupon setup. So we'll just select coupons here. So within the coupons, you can create a new coupon at the bottom, or you can find an existing coupon. Here are the different types that you can set up. You also have applies to, so you can choose if it applies to all report categories or specific report categories that you select, or maybe a specific product, or a bunch of products that you select. Then there's also to selected products. So the selected product means that you're selecting it on the POS. So it's more of like an on-the-fly selected discount. On the left, there's the type of coupon. So percent off is basically whatever percent that you set to what is applicable. And this is $1 off amount to what is applicable. Fixed price means that if you set this to $5, it's going to change anything that applies to $5. So it's not going to take a discount off. It's just going to change the selling price to $5. And then the manual by amount and percentage are basically a way for you to choose your percent amount or your dollar amount on the fly on the front till. Okay. Now at the top we have security level. So as we were talking about earlier, this is the minimum level required to use this discount. Now if you set it so that only managers can use this particular discount, when a bartender tries to use it, it will come up with a prompt asking for manager access, at which point a manager can type in their code to give this particular discount. Okay, so just to kind of go a little bit further into the applies to, when you select applies to certain categories, you can set the categories in here. So now we can go, this is the does not apply, and this is the applies. So you can go over here and select like brunch, move it over, and so on and so forth. applies to certain products the same way, but now you have a product list. Then you would go in and choose your products. And then, of course, to a product is just selecting one product. And then selected products is on the POS itself. Okay. For the additional options, do we want the coupon to, or the discount to deduct taxes? This is where you would set that. Do we want this to auto apply? So what auto apply and auto calculate means, these auto areas, is if you were to set this to auto apply, theoretically the discount would automatically apply to the bill without you finding it if it meets the criteria. So for instance, here's an example. Let's say that I have a $5 off margarita pizza and I set that up. Well, if I go auto apply, that means that as soon as I ring in a margarita pizza and I'm a bartender, let's say, the discount will automatically apply into the transaction without me triggering it. So this is only if you know that 100% of the time you want to give that discount regardless. So it's nice if you have like a very specific special day where you don't want to take the time to ring in the coupon or something like that. You just want it to auto apply. Auto remove means that it needs to work in conjunction with the auto apply. But basically what it means is that if you ring in that margarita pizza, let's say, and it automatically applies the $5 off margarita pizza, coupon. Well, automatic remove means that if you remove the margarita pizza, it will also remove the coupon. But if you uncheck this and just keep auto apply, what happens is if you remove the margarita pizza, it's not going to remove the coupon. So usually you want both. Auto calculate means that if the bill changes, so let's say we have like a margarita pizza and we have the $5 off, and that's unchecked. Well, let's say we ring in a second margarita pizza. Well, the calculation is not going to change to take into effect the second pizza. But if we auto calculate like that, then basically it's going to take into consideration that we have 2 margarita pizzas. So it's going to change the amount of the coupon. Requirements is going to be, do we only want to allow this once per check? Do we want to allow other discounts? Do we want to apply only once if multiple products are found? Do we want to have a minimum price or quantity before it hits a threshold? So if we do minimum price, we need it to be over $5 before we even think about considering this discount. And there's even a spot here, do not apply to already discounted items. And then it requires other products to fulfill. So like this could be an example of where, let's say you're giving a $5 coupon for a burger and fries, but we also need to make sure that the fries are rung in for it to fulfill. So it would need both the burger and the fries. And then at the advanced, we have a start date and an end date. The end date, basically, if we want this coupon to end at some point, we can select the end date and it will automatically remove itself. It's not going to delete the coupon, but it's just going to stop it from working on the front tail. And then we also have a schedule button where you can essentially, you can black out certain days. So if you had some kind of discount for wings, let's say, you could black out the days in which you're not giving that discount so that the staff are not tempted to use it. Okay, so next up we're going to be covering the floor plan, which is your table layouts. First, we'll cover the sections. So if you go into the sections, you need to design each section depending on if you have multiple rooms in your bar or restaurant. So if you have like a patio, you'd want to create a section for the patio. Um, if you have like an upstairs bar and a main bar, or maybe you have like a lounge and a restaurant, you might want to create a section for each. So you go in and you would create each section. For the purposes of this demo, we have main floor and pool tables. So those are two sections that I've selected. So go ahead and create those. At which point then you're going to go into your table layout designer. And this is where you actually design the floor plan. So very straightforward. We have our empty squares here. So these are going to be the sections, but you need to actually tell it which one is which. So you'd start with the top left. This square, we would just hit an empty spot twice, and we would tag it as main floor. Scroll down, tag this one as pool table. So now that I've tagged my sections, I can start to add tables to the floor plan. So we have three different shapes here. We've got the circle, the square, and the diamond, depending on what shape you need. We also have the sizes, so regular, medium, and large. So that's just the default size that's going to come out. So if I want to add a circle, I would just click, hold, drag in somewhere on the screen, and then it asks for the table number, so we can go ahead and choose that and hit OK, and now I've created my first table. If I click and highlight, I can also increase and decrease the size from the default selected size. I can drag in another, but we want to do square this time, and there we go, we have another table. And this is basically where you start placing your tables, somewhat in the position, if you were to look top down at your restaurant, what it would look on like a schematic or a drawing. You can also use the drawing tools to help add context. So you could say like over here, maybe we want to use this kind of checkered look, or maybe like that. You can click on here and choose a different color. So maybe you want like the bar to be brown, and we can just draw in a little bar here. And then you could probably add some walls as well, just to kind of add a little bit more context, right? And then from there, you grab your clicker tool, and now you can drag over to here. So that's how you design the floor plan. It's pretty straightforward. There's also a font tool as well. So some people like to click on the font tool and type in something like front door, something like that. Always remember when you're doing like backgrounds, it's good to remove that kind of background color as well. So that's the main bar. Then you do like the pool tables, for instance, and you'd start filling in the floor plan for that. And that's basically all you have to do with the table layout. It's a lot of work, like mapping all the different table numbers, but the basic functionality is pretty straightforward. When you're done with the floor plan, you would go save layout. I usually go save as, and we can call this test floor plan, and hit OK. And now I've saved this into my database, and now I can actually deploy it to a station or a group of stations if I want to. There's also an option to modify existing floor plans, so you can always go load layout, choose one of the existing ones. Let's go my floor. And then you can kind of move this around and save as you need to. You can always right click and change table numbers, so on and so forth. So like I can go change table number 5 and change that on the fly, or move it around as I need to. Then I would simply hit save. Also at the top, we also have options. So some people like to print out the floor plan so that they can put it out in the bar somewhere. So you do have that option as well at the end of everything. And then on the tools, we kind of touched through this briefly. There is that cursor tool where you can move things around. There's the remove object button there. There's also a duplicate object as well. So in the case of us creating a shape, if you wanted to let's say, duplicate that shape. I'll just put some color in there. You can copy this and drag the other one around, right? There's also like a color wheel where you can change the colors a little bit if you want to change the font, so on and so forth. Just kind of highlight your mouse to show you what each one means. The resolution for the most part is going to be 1024 by 768, but if you're using a really old computer, it could go down to 800 by 600. But these are all the resolutions that you can select. Okay, so next up, we're going to show you, if you do create a floor plan, this is how you load it into your till. So we get out of here, we're going to go to point of sale. Then we're going to go to stations. And down here, you see where it says floor layout? So this is where you would go in and select your proper floor plan. And you can select it for every station. So the arrows or the find tool is going to show you all the different stations. So if you have 4 or 5 stations, you'd go to every single station, make sure that you choose the new test floor plan, go to station 2, and just kind of rinse repeat. When you're done, you're going to hit update POS terminals, and then you need to do a restart of the software on every single till to get the changes. So it's not like the changes with everything else, but the floor plan, you actually need to close the software, not the whole computer, but just the software, and reopen the software back up. Okay, so aside from that, the only other thing that I want to touch upon is this back office. Whenever we make changes to employees, products, pricing, anything like that, we hit the update POS terminals button at the bottom, which will then send any changes over to the tills. The only thing that the tills need to do is they need to be logged out and on the main login panel. It takes about 10 seconds after you log out. It takes about 10 seconds to complete the update. There should be a blue square that pops up on the screen for about 5 seconds, and then you can go in and see all the changes. Just to reiterate what I mentioned before, 2 things. Number 1, you make any changes to let's say security levels for employees, or you change job positions, they need to clock out and clock back in to see the changes. So sometimes you might even want to wait for the staff to clock in the next morning to get those changes. And number 2, any floor plan changes of any kind, changing numbers, things like that, you need to close out of the POS software and open it up again. Okay. So that's it for the back office. Now we're going to go into system setup. So this is the globe. We're going to go ahead, log in. We're going to log in with 100 and hit OK. Always hit the no, and now we're logged in. So the one main place that we want to go into the system set is going to be the report viewer. So clicking on the report viewer on the screen brings us to our report viewer. I'm not going to get into this too much, but I'll show you a couple of things. So the reports, we have different reports here. There's a lot of different sections. Some of the default reports can be found under sales and summary reports. The sales summary is going to be your basic sales summary report for the day or for the month. Check marking detailed will expand the report to have additional information. So some of these reports are always good to check mark the detailed. So if I click on sales summary and go run report, I can choose my start and end date. So I can go from the 1st of August to the 28th if I want to. Select OK, and it's going to process that report. There are some options here. You can export the report. And the exportation will allow you to do PDF. You can do like an XLS spreadsheet, text file, CSV, you name it. You can also print it off as well. Always look at the view pages because there will be additional pages to kind of filter through. So on this sales summary report, you can basically see all the data. Sometimes we need to scroll over to those additional pages. And that is how the report viewer works. Now let's just kind of get in a little bit more here. So just to kind of show you the detailed button. So let's go into a very important report, which is under report category. We have a report called sales by category. So if I were to run this without the detailed and select from the 1st to the 28th, let's say, we run this and we can see all of our quantities sold for our report categories. Pretty straightforward. However, when I check mark detailed and I run that report, now it's going to expand the report to show us how many French fries we sold, nachos, poutines, and so on and so forth. So it changes and expands the reports. And this could be for many different reports. Like you could probably do the same thing under the employee sales by category as well. Like if we were to uncheck this, employee sales by category will show the wait server sold 11 appetizers, 1 steak. But when we check mark the detailed, obviously that's going to expand out to how many nachos, French fries, poutines that we sold. So make sure you're using the detail depending on what you need. Aside from that, the system setup is really only used if you're more familiar with it because you used older versions of PixelPoint. I can tell you that I do prefer the system set over the back office just because it's a little bit more user friendly, but there are a lot of features and a lot of limitations with the system set. So please make sure to go through all of those nuances with a support person. Otherwise, I would say if you're not too familiar with PixelPoint, stick with the back office, specifically if you're using version 20 of PixelPoint. The things that you can absolutely not do on the system set versus the back office, you cannot do a floor plan. You cannot edit any like like order page layouts. So like you can't change the buttons on the layout. You can change the products on the layout, but any of the screen dynamics you can't change. Otherwise, it will break the system. So you have to be very careful when you do use the system set. However, for creating products, I find it to be a little bit easier. So I'll quickly show you that. So product setup over here. Kind of similar view to what was shown in the back office. We have our copy button here, so you can see the description, the printed description, the pricing is all the same. The report category mapping, the type of product, everything's the same there. If you were to go to custom, you can also do the define custom here as well. And then under advanced, we have the feature codes, the same kind of like logic that we were shown. It's just a different area, a lot of it, and it's missing some of those other programming pieces. So if you know what you're doing, this is technically faster to program. Also, same thing with the menu setup. You can go in here, and you can also see your layout on this screen. All right, the last thing that I want to cover is the actual menu setup. So I recommend, aside from using the report viewer on the system setup, the other thing that I would actually recommend to use is the menu setup option. So we went through creating products earlier, but I didn't show you how to map it onto an actual POS screen. So this is how we do it. We go into menu setup, and then from here we can actually see all of our different menus. So if you click the multi-menu in the top left, you can see our 2 different menus that we have going, so you can flip between both. So in this case, I'm going to use the pub menu actually, because I think that's going to be a little bit easier to use. And then from there, you can look at all the pages at the bottom here, the appetizers, entrees, brunch, so on and so forth. If you need to move the button placement, it's just as easy as clicking, holding, and just moving it around the page, right? Pretty easy. If you want to trash a button, you can click on nachos, click and hold, and drag to the trash bin. It's not going to delete from the database, it's just going to hide it from the menu. And then if you do want to bring that the button back, there's a products tab here. You can select nachos, and you can click, hold, and drag back onto the page. Okay, so that's how you kind of hide and move around buttons. If you need to edit a product, you can obviously go into the product setup in the back office, or you can go right into the button here and select edit product. And then you can make changes to the color of the button and all the kind of functions that we did earlier. So this is better if you want to do some quick changes, right? Same thing with the pages. If you click here and select edit page, you can change the color of the page, the POS button, the text color, things like that. Okay. If you scroll down, there's more empty pages, so you can create more additional pages if you need to as well. So that is on there too. If you want to create a brand new product from scratch, you can collect it. You can either find it in the list or select an empty square and select create new product. Usually I recommend using the product setup in the back office first because there's a lot more options, but this is good at the end to just drag and drop. Okay. That's pretty much it. If you hit the lightning bolt, you can see kind of like a demo of the screen. This is not your actual POS. This is just an example of it. So there is that option as well. Now, I'm going to close out of here, and I'm going to show you how the back office looks. And honestly, you can pick between both. But I do find the other one to be easier. So if you want to look at the menu in the back office, you select menu and menu setup, and then from here you can choose your menu, and then we can see the the layout. The main difference is I find that you have to kind of tweak the sizing of the screen. Okay, so this pretty much covers the training for the back end. The purpose of this video wasn't to go through 100% of the features and functions. We probably only went through about 40% of it, maybe even 30. But what we went through is the most important day-to-day stuff: your sales reports, your discounts, products, menu mapping, like creating employees. These are the and then I would say like the floor plan. These are the primary topics and the things that you're going to be using 90% of the time. The rest are minor things, so like some things that we didn't copy, target were the scheduling manager for employees, time clock manager. We didn't go through some of the printer mapping, more advanced settings and policies, and we didn't go through the inventory. I do have some additional videos. I believe they're about 10 hours in length. They come directly from PixelPoint. They are outdated. They're about 10 years old, and they're on a much older version of Pixel, but the training still holds up, and the structure hasn't changed that much. So you can definitely check out those videos if you want some supplementary knowledge, or if you want to go through those additional topics, like you are interested in the scheduling, the time clock manager, or let's say inventory, something like that. We can schedule a training session to go through that at the Star support side. I may create those videos in the future, determining if there's a need for it. So it may happen if there's a lot of people asking for it, but I wanted to get through the basis first. So